Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy human being you, and welcome to today's true crime video. I am so happy that you are here. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the abduction and murder of Alexis Murphy. But before we get started, if you've not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. Now, before we get into the details of today's case, I first need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, a new sponsor of the channel, and that is Nextiva. Now, I want to start this off with a question for you. One, here's the question. Do you own your own business? And if you do, are you still using your personal cell phone and your personal cell phone number, more specifically, to run all of your business? Because if you are, I am sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you may be sabotaging your success. Like, okay, you remember back in 2020? I feel like you probably remember the time. Everybody started working from home, but nobody was really prepared to do so. And this affected my business as well. We were all working from home. And so everybody, me included, I am included in the everybody I'm discussing, okay? We were all doing business from our personal cell phones while trying to make it look like we were the face of a company. And really, it just sort of made us look like amateurs. And that is not the impression you want to be giving your clients if you're trying to be a business professional. On top of that, everybody on my team was using like a bunch of different apps to get things done because we didn't have one place to consolidate our business where we could do like our voice memos, our text messages, our video scheduled meetings, etc. I think this is a pretty common problem for people who have their own business to run into. And here's the thing about me. I don't like problems. I like solutions. And that's why I want to introduce you to Nextiva, the one business communication platform that helps you seamlessly personalize your customer interactions, even if you're currently running your whole business off your personal phone and your customer relationship management system is just a spreadsheet. And one of the best parts, I was going to say the best part, but one of the best parts is that it's super easy. You don't need any like experience in the tech world because listen, that's not me. You do not need experience in the tech world to make this work for you. All you have to do is download the app and follow the easy setup to give your company the polish of a Fortune 500 company, even if you're not quite there yet. And I do say yet because we are manifesting. We are manifesting health, and we are manifesting wealth, and we are manifesting sounding professional at all times. Oh, and I almost forgot, something that's pretty cool that you can do through Nextiva is you can create phone numbers. So basically, if you're, doing it all on your cell phone and you don't want people to have your number, or you just want to know that it's a client that's calling you, through Nextiva, you can create a phone number. You can choose the area code that you want it to have. And then you give that phone number to your business contacts. When they call you, it gets routed. That number gets routed to your cell phone. But most importantly, it lets you know on the screen that it's Nextiva that has routed it through to your phone. So it's just like not a normal call that's coming into your cell phone. Because if you're like me, maybe you ignore calls from numbers you don't recognize. But if you see it's coming through Nextiva, you could be like, oh, down to business I shall get. And that way you never miss a potentially important phone call because you have streamlined all of your communications with Nextiva. Now, of course, I'm telling you this because I have great news. Nextiva is offering members of the Brat Pack the opportunity to get up to 50% off their Nextiva plan with my link. Now, if all of that sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to click the link in my description box. It's trynextiva.com/BRATTERSTEIN to let them know I'm the one that sent you and get up to 50% off your Nextiva plan today. And now I just want to say a big thank you to Nextiva for partnering with me on today's video. It's partners like Nextiva that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock, don't ever change. All right, with all of that, let's go ahead and get into this video. Now, this is a video on a case that I've wanted to cover for a while. On my computer, I have my, my files for each case that I'm going to cover. And I created Alexis's file back in May of 2022, actually. But I just hadn't delved into it. Dove? I had not jumped in with both feet because it's just like a very sad case. But with this time of year coming, this is the anniversary. The anniversary of her disappearance actually just passed when I am filming this. I started thinking about her more, and I felt like it was time to delve into this case. I wanted to sit down. I wanted to talk about her. I wanted to tell her story, and I wanted to talk about the person who did this to her, where, typically I don't like to focus on the killers very much when I'm telling these cases, but in this instance, police believe that it's very possible that he's responsible for additional murders. So discussing him and discussing this case is very important. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, I want you to answer the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your head. I'm actually going to ask you 2 questions, and you're going to have them now. So they can be kicking around in your head as we go through the details of this case. But of course, I want you to answer once you have something to go on. But the questions of the day are these. 1, how do you believe that Alexis's killer was able to lure her in order to take her life at all? What is your thoughts on that? Because there is some... people have differing opinions on that. And 2, do you believe that this person is responsible for additional murders? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. Now, with all that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of Alexis Murphy. Now, I want to start this video off with a quote. This is a quote from one of the investigators who worked on Alexis's case, and he's referring to the prosecution of her killer specifically. And he said, quote, "We should not reward a person by not charging them with murder just because they are good at hiding the body." On August 3rd, 2013, 17-year-old Alexis Murphy had plans to travel from her hometown of Shipman, Virginia, which was in Nelson County, to Lynchburg, which was about a 20-minute drive away. Somehow, in that small stretch of distance, she disappeared. She was last seen at a gas station that was popular with the local kids. She went in, was caught on camera, left, and got in her car, and just vanished. Now, it would not take police long to discover who was responsible for Alexis's disappearance and murder. And even though this person would not reveal the location of her body, and even though during this time in Virginia, there had only been like maybe 2 cases where they had even taken the case to trial without a body, the investigators working on Alexis's case believed the case they had was strong enough that they could take this person to trial for murder without even having a body to prove she was dead. Now, I want to talk about who Alexis was, who she was to the people who loved her, before we get into all of what I've just discussed and all the evidence they had against this guy and exactly what is believed to have happened to Alexis. Alexis Tiara Murphy was born June 5th, 1996 in Charlottesville, Virginia, to her mother, Laura Ann, and father, Troy. And she was their only daughter, and she had 3 brothers. Now, Alexis was said to be the fashionista of her family. She was a serious girly girl. Yeah, girly girl who was really into her appearance. She would sometimes even stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get her hair done to be ready for the next day. She was really into fashion. She particularly liked hunting at thrift stores to find vintage fashion. And I think she actually worked at a clothing store as well at the time she was killed, and she wanted to be a model. She was also the joker of her family. She was the person who could brighten up your day, even if it was like the worst day you were having, because she was just great. She was funny and outgoing, but also humble and genuine. Most of all, she was happy. She was just like a really happy kid. And that's one of the things her mother says she misses most about her, is just how happy she was. She remembers like laying in bed at night and hearing Alexis in her room watching like comedy shows on TV and just laughing, right? She misses the sound of her daughter's laughter coming through the walls. At the time she was killed, she was again 17 years old, and she loved to dance and was an athlete, playing volleyball in high school with plans to play at a collegiate level because she was actually nearly done with school and had plans to attend college after her graduation. So she was just like really looking forward to her future and all that life had to offer her. Now, I can tell you all of that about Alexis, right? I can give you all this information coming from an outsider point of view because I did not know her. I never met her. But I think it's best when you have the opportunity to hear about a person from the point of view of their family, from the people who loved them and the people who lost them. So with that, I want to read to you a portion of the obituary that was written for her because I think it says more about who Alexis was than I ever could. They said of Alexis, and I quote, "Joyful, vibrant, athletic, stunningly beautiful. Webster has not presented enough adjectives to describe her infectious personality and warm heart. Her humor and laugh still resonate if we listen intently. The shuffle of her slippers and the dragging of the extension cord tied to her iPhone still vibrate in our ears when we least expect it. Alexis is a girl who talked to the kids no one else talked to. She is the friend with a listening ear and truthful advice, the sister who always cherished her brothers even when they got on her nerves, the niece that made being an aunt all the more special, the cousin that you could always count on, the granddaughter that you all wish for, the daughter that made her parents proud. Alexis can now be found in the soft rain of spring, the crisp autumn air, the sparkle of snowflakes, and the warm summer sun. She is on the wings of butterflies, for her spirit is too large to be contained by this earth. So she was very clearly loved and important and is missed by her family because she was so close with her family. That was one thing. Like most of her days off, she could be found on the patio with her cousins hanging out. And even though she was fiercely independent because she was also the type of person who always checked in with her family, particularly her mother, to let her know where she was and what she was doing. And that's why when she disappeared on the evening of August 3rd, 2013, her family immediately knew that something was wrong. So that day was a normal day. Alexis was, hanging out at the house. She was happy. She was laughing. She was getting herself ready because she was going to get her hair done because she was getting her senior pictures taken because, again, she was about to graduate high school. Her mother, meanwhile, this was Laura. She was getting ready to go work an overnight shift at the post office and thought to herself, I need to give Alexis money so she can go and get her hair done. So she did. Her and her mother had an exchange, her mother, like a verbal exchange, and also an exchange of money. Her mom gave her some money, and that was the last time she saw her daughter. Now, Alexis left her house with everybody believing that she was driving towards Lynchburg. And it is believed that that is what was happening based on the direction she was going, which they find out later. And also the fact that she tweeted about this. And she had a pretty big Twitter following, especially for 2013. She reportedly had like 12,000 followers at that time. And as she left that day, she tweeted out, quote, "Bergbound," like Lynchburg, Bergbound, and was on her way. And from there, nobody even knew that anything had gone wrong for hours because she was going somewhere that it was expected that it was going to take a while for her to get home. Now, apparently nobody knew anything bad had happened to Alexis until the early morning hours of August 4th, 2013. And this is because, the day had gone on. People had gone to bed. It was now past midnight when Alexis's grandma, who lived in the house, woke up and realized that Alexis wasn't home. She had gone to bed before Alexis's curfew, which was 11 p.m., and so when she woke up and Alexis wasn't home, which she should be, she immediately knew something was wrong because Alexis was just not the type of girl to miss curfew. So with that, Grandma calls Alexis's mom, Laura, to let her know what's going on. And apparently, Laura was already kind of freaking out a little bit. So I guess she was on the road returning home from her Saturday night shift at the USPS just outside of Richmond. And she had been trying to call Alexis over and over and didn't get a response and knew that this was weird because her family joked about how she literally had her phone glued to her hand. She would fall asleep with it in her hand. She would bring it with her everywhere. As you heard in her obituary, they joked about the fact that she would literally have this long extension cord plugged into her phone so that she could move from room to room without having her phone in her hand while it charged. So for her daughter to not respond to any of her calls or texts, it made no sense because she would always have her phone in her hand. So with that, Laura calls Alexis's dad and fills him in on the situation. And immediately he's like, call the cops. He's trying to keep calm and not freak out too much because he wants to be strong for the family and he doesn't want to think of the worst. But for her not to come home by curfew and the fact that she was driving his car and she hadn't brought his car back, he just knew something was wrong and there were a million just horrific things running through his mind. With that, her family went to the sheriff's department and they filed a missing persons report. And surprisingly, it was taken seriously right off the bat, which we love to see it, right? There's so many cases that we talk about or that we read about, or at least me, I can't speak for you, that I talk about and I read about where somebody is reported missing and they just don't take it seriously right off the bat, particularly when the missing person is Black. So I am happy to see that that's not what happened here. Immediately, searches began, and the first place they went to was a 4,800-acre estate in Arlington, Virginia, called Oak Ridge Estate, because Alexis's family was actually able to track her last location with the Find My iPhone app. Another case with the Find My iPhone app. I was telling you I had never even heard of this, and now this case, and then the case I covered, well, at this point it was several weeks ago, the Haley Anderson case where they used the Find My iPhone app to try to locate their missing loved one. But anyways, this case was combed through with people on foot, people in cars, people in helicopters, but it ended up being a dead end. But that's not to say that her phone as a whole ended up being a dead end, because police requested her cell phone records. But in the meantime, they conducted other searches while they waited to get those phone records. So what they were doing in the meantime is they were following other leads. And one of the huge leads, one of the most daunting tasks that they had to take on, was going through her social media presence, because she left a large footprint, right? She had thousands of, nameless, faceless people that police had to look into to make sure that these people, that somebody that she didn't even know was obsessed with her, could be responsible for what happened to her, with the officer saying that social media can be a breeding ground for predators. But, where social media can be a dangerous place and an unhelpful place in that way, it can also be helpful in that it helps get the case out there. Within no time, they were able to let so many people know that Alexis was missing, and to get her story out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And then in addition to that, they also had several agencies working the case, from the sheriff's office to the state police to the FBI. But anyways, because her social media was so bountiful, social media experts from the FBI had to join the case and trace all of her digital messages to see if they could get, any additional information. And from doing that, they were able to confirm that she was, in fact, headed to Lynchburg. And from there, officials started looking into the road, which was Route 29, that Alexis would have taken to Lynchburg. And they learned that this was not the road you would want somebody to be on, because it was the scene of the scene of a rash of horrific incidences, or something like that. A rash of mysterious crimes. I just consulted with my notes. And it's just, I feel like that's such a common thing, right? So often in these cases that I've looked at, well, not so often, but we have seen before in cases that we've looked into collectively, you and I, specifically you, that there's this one particular road that people just know, you don't go down that road because shit goes down on that road, like the Highway of Tears, things like that. There are places like that people know of. And so that's why police were looking into Route 29, because this was another area where these types of things happen. But in looking into this line of interest in investigating this particular lead, it again went nowhere. But again, that's not to say they had nothing, because remember, they requested Alexis's cell phone records, and they were able to get Alexis's cell phone records. And from that, they were able to see where her phone had last pinged. And incidentally, that location where her phone last pinged was different from the location that her family had uncovered with the Find My iPhone app, which makes me question how good that app is as a whole. But, I digress a smidge. They were able to see that where she had actually last been was the Liberty gas station in Lovington, Virginia. Livington was a combination of Liberty and Lovington, in case you were curious where that came from. Now, I say that the ping was at this gas station, but obviously it couldn't be exactly at this gas station, but it pinged near the gas station. So police sat there and kind of brainstormed where she could be in relation to this ping. And that's how they came up with the gas station, because they knew this was a place that she hung out. Apparently, this gas station was a place where the local teens, the youths, would spend time just across the board. So they're like, she's a youth. She may have been there. So they go there. They get the surveillance footage, and bing, bang, boom, there she was on camera at about 7 p.m. the day that she disappeared. She looked totally normal, not upset or scared or anything. It was just a really normal looking experience. She just goes into the store, does her thing, and then leaves. Now, though nothing totally notable happened in the video, it was useful in a couple of ways. One, they were able to see her and see what she was last wearing, so that they could get a photo and a description of her out to the public as soon as possible. She was wearing a pink top, floral spandex pants, and brown boots while carrying a gray purse. And they were also able to get a very specific time frame for what happened to her. So she was seen on the camera at the gas station at around 7 p.m. It was 7:02, let's say 7 p.m. Okay. And she's all good and well. But her last cell phone ping before it just went completely dark was at 7:15 p.m. So in less than 20 minutes, something had happened to her. And whatever happened to her had to have happened close by to the gas station, because, she didn't have the time to get very far. So with that, they end up making their search area Livingston, obviously, but also a 30-mile radius around the town. And they were going to be looking be on the lookout for both her and the car she was driving. Now, recovering her was going to take quite some time, but it wouldn't take nearly as much time to locate the car, because on August 6th, they actually got a call, police did, with a tip that her car had been seen. Well, not her car, her father's car that she had been driving. Police went to the area that the person had called in, like the location that the person who called in gave them, and they confirmed that yes, this was the car. It was found abandoned in Charlottesville, which is about 40 miles north of Alexis's home and 70 miles north of Lynchburg, which is where Alexis was heading to that day. It was parked at the Carmike 6 movie theater in northern Albemarle, Albemarle County. I'm not even going to try. You let me know, because I know that you know. But that's where it was left. And one neighbor, well, it wasn't a neighbor, one tenant who lived in an apartment building that was nearby the movie theater said that that car had been there at least since Monday the 5th, because that's when they first saw it parked there. When police got there and realized that this was the car she was driving, it was obviously great, right? Like, it was a step in the right direction, but they were terrified. They were like so scared that they were going to open up the trunk of this car and she was going to be dead in the trunk. But luckily that wasn't the case. Luckily, but still meant that they had no idea where she was, right? They had the car, but they didn't know where she was. And they didn't even know if she was the person who dropped this car off at this location. They didn't really know anything. So police are there and they start looking around and they're like, oh, look at all of these establishments. Like, we've been to a movie theater. We know that there's always things around a movie theater. So like, I wonder if any of these places have surveillance footage that shows the person who was driving this car dropping it off. And it turns out, good news for them, they were able to get video surveillance of the person dropping the car off the day that Alexis went missing. So all that sounds great, right? Except of course it can never be that easy, because the footage was like very dark, because when the car was dropped off, it was actually 10:30 the night that Alexis disappeared. So it's dark. It's also super grainy. And even though they had, the FBI helping, they weren't able to enhance it to see who the person was that dropped off the car. All they could see was that somebody came, somebody dropped it off, and somebody left, but they couldn't really figure out anything from there, not even distinguishing features. But Alexis's family said that they knew right off the bat that it wasn't Alexis who dropped off this car for 2 reasons. One, she had no reason to. Like, there's no reason to drop it there. There's no reason for her to be in that location. And 2, she was really, really afraid of the dark, so she wouldn't have done that. So that surveillance footage was kind of a bust. I mean, it does show you when the car got there, but it doesn't give them any more helpful information. So all they really have at this point is the surveillance footage from the gas station. And this was more useful than I let on so far, because there was something else that was caught on that footage that I didn't mention yet. And that is that Alexis had an interaction with a man as she was either walking in or walking out. I don't think it's super relevant. When she was going through the door, a man held the door open for her. And it appeared from watching the footage that the two may have had like an interaction, a small conversation with one another. So it's not much, but it's something to go on. Police go and they speak to the gas station attendants and they're like, have you seen this man? And they're like, oh, that guy. Yeah, that's Randy. Randy is a regular who always comes here. He buys beer. He buys cigarettes. He parks in the parking lot with his Chevy Suburban and he leers at all of our customers. And this turned out to be 48-year-old Randy Taylor. Now, Randy did have criminal records in Greene County, Albemarle County, which we already discussed, I can't say that, and Virginia Beach. He was arrested for arson, for statutory burglary, and for larceny, which, is obviously very different than kidnapping and murder. But police also believe that these are just the things he was caught for, because they believe that he has been responsible for additional crimes that he just has not been caught for. Anyways, police have a name and they get a location, and it is an address that is on Route 29, the road that Alexis was going to be driving on to go to Lynchburg. So they get there, police get there, and there was a house on the property, though it's not where he lived. He lived in like a trailer type situation on the property. And apparently this property was absolutely wilded because it was summer there. So there was like overgrown brush everywhere. And investigators say it looked like it was right out of a horror movie. The overgrown brush, there was shit everywhere, I guess, not just on the property, but inside the trailer. They just said it was just like not a super nice view, basically. But anyways, that aside, they're there and they tell him, they're like, hey, Randy, hello. We are investigating the disappearance of a girl named Alexis Murphy. Can you tell me where you were on August 3rd? Give me all the information. He's like, me, August 3rd, I was nowhere. Okay, I don't know Alexis. Never met her in my life. Was nowhere near that gas station. Not me. Okay, don't look over here, bitch. It was not me. He told police that that day he had been drinking and riding four-wheelers in Orange County before heading to a Sheetz gas station in Madison Heights, which is not the gas station we've been talking about here. And police did look into his alibi and looked at the surveillance footage from the time that he said he was at this other gas station. And spoiler alert, he was not there. They asked him over and over if he had been to the Liberty gas station in Livingston the day that Alexis disappeared. And over he said no. He's like, no, I was never there. You couldn't catch me there if my life depended on it, whatever. And he kept saying that until finally they show him that they have surveillance footage that shows that he was there. And that people who worked there confirmed that, yes, he was there and he was a regular. And he was like, well, here's the thing. I just don't remember being there. So maybe I was, but I don't remember it. And police at this point know that he's lying. They already confirmed for sure that it was him because in the surveillance, well, first off, the people who worked there said that it was him. So that's a huge thing. And another thing is in the surveillance footage, you can see that this guy has this big, distinguishable, identifiable tattoo on his neck. And now they're sitting in front of him. And there he is with the stupid tattoo on his neck. So now they know that he is a big liar. So they push him further, but he still denies knowing her, denies ever seeing her, denies remembering being at the gas station, and definitely denies her ever being to his trailer or on his property. But police don't really believe him. One, he's proven to be a liar. And two, they actually had some additional information from that surveillance footage from the gas station that I just didn't tell you about yet. I'm just giving you little breadcrumbs here as we go. But basically, it was a big one for police because they see them, have their interaction at the door. They see them sort of talk to each other. Then they see that his very distinct truck is on, because it's a camo wrap. There will be photos. There's a camo truck. You'll see. They see his truck, very distinct truck, head off in the direction of his trailer. And at the exact same time, they see Alexis's car following directly behind him. So it looked like she was following him home. So they push him, and eventually he does break a little bit. He admits, okay, I did sort of know her. I met her a year earlier at a car wash, which I just went so brain dead for a second. I don't know why this popped into my head. I don't think I even included it in my notes, but I just remember reading it that when Alexis's family found out that he was responsible, they heard his name and they saw his face. Alexis's Aunt Trina remembered that she bought a car from a dealership where Randy worked and found the whole thing to be totally eerie, that she had met him before and that he went on to do this. Because spoiler alert, he did this. But anyways, Randy said that day he saw her at the gas station again and he recognized her and that he had been outside smoking weed and that she had smelled it and it kind of went up and made a comment to him about how it smelled like some good stuff. Which, by the way, Alexis's mother does not believe this is true. She says that she never knew Alexis to be the type of person to smoke weed. She never knew of her to smoke weed. I do know that teenagers hide things from their parents, and I don't want to say her mom's wrong because I don't know. Again, I don't know her, but I can't see another way that the next steps would have happened. What happens next? I don't see how it would have happened if he didn't offer her something to get her to follow him. But again, this is just his version of what happened because Alexis isn't here to answer for herself because he killed her. Randy says at this point, after discussing weed with her, he invited her back to his trailer. And not just her, because according to him, she wasn't alone. She was with a young man who was in his 20s, a black dude with cornrows, and that Randy, invited both of them back to his trailer to smoke a little weed, have a good time. So he says that the three of them went back to his trailer. And once they got there, Alexis's friend was like, hey, do you have anything to drink? And he didn't. So he says he left Alexis and her friend at his trailer alone while he went to the store to buy a 6-pack. So that they were alone at his trailer for a while to explain, why any weirdness would be in the trailer that he has no explanation for is what it turns out to be. But anyway, he says he gets back and Alexis and her friend are still there. They're having a good time. They drink, they hang out, they party. They laugh. Everything is good. And at the end of the night, Alexis and her friend bid him adieu and went off into the evening and everything was fine. And that's the last time I ever saw her. Now, even though this accounting of what happened sounds ridiculous, they still had to validate it or invalidate it, right? But in the meantime, they get a search warrant so that they could search, Randy's trailer, the property, things like that. And in the meantime, they are scouring freaking Alexis's social media to see if any guys fit the description of the guy that Randy says was with her the day she disappeared. And eventually they end up landing on this guy who, I don't know if it's his real name, but in some reports they call him Damien. So I'm just going to go with that. It felt like it wasn't his real name though. And it doesn't end up mattering because Damien's not involved. But when they show Randy, this guy Damien, he's like, yes, that's the guy. That's who she was with. Damien, of course. Now, police look into Damien and they find that he did go to the same school as Alexis. They did know each other. And he did do some things that could be considered suspicious around the same time that Alexis disappeared. Like right after she disappeared, he just moved. He just up and moved, I believe, to Alabama. And then after Randy got arrested, he moved back. So that could look suspicious, but he had an alibi. He was in Alabama with his dad at the time that Alexis went missing, and they were able to prove this. Police were able to confirm that this alibi was true. Investigators just saw this whole story about another person as Randy's way of trying to push the investigation in a direction that wasn't him, right? He was like, don't look at me, look over here. It was somebody else. But they were able to prove, they were able to see that this wasn't true, that he was lying. And then things were going to get even worse for him, because in addition to knowing that he was lying about another person being there and about this, I've explained it. They had also, again, gotten search warrants for his property and his trailer, and they had found some things that did not look good for Randy, and unfortunately also didn't look good for Alexis, like hair extensions that looked like they were ripped from her head, a diamond stud from what appeared to be one of her piercings, and a fingernail that was torn off. And when all of these things were tested for DNA, they came back as a match to Alexis. When this was found, the investigator said, this is the type of evidence that just immediately makes your stomach turn. And on top of that, police had brought in some police dogs, some very good boys who were trained in smelling the adhesive that is used on cell phones, which I did not know was a thing, but apparently is a thing. And they searched the trailer and they searched the surrounding property. And about 70 feet away from Randy's trailer, they found Alexis's cell phone, and it was smashed, big smash. The battery was ripped out. It was destroyed. It was destroyed so bad that even though it was sent to the FBI lab in Quantico, they couldn't retrieve anything off this cell phone because it had been so sufficiently destroyed. And remember, Alexis would not have gone anywhere voluntarily without her cell phone. It was her lifeline. It was attached to her. So you take the fact that they found this along with the fact that they found her hair that looked like it was ripped off, and not like a broken fingernail, a torn fingernail. It was not looking good. And it was going to get even worse upon a second search that happened at his property, that happened after police got a tip from a person who worked at a local sex shop, which I think I should tell you about that real quick before we get into what they found. Basically, an employee at the Ultimate Bliss adult store in Charlottesville, called the police and claimed that just 45 minutes before Randy was at the gas station where Alexis was last seen, he was in their store purchasing 2 adult videos. And this was just 2 miles away from where Alexis's car would later be found. Management said Randy came in, he picked 2 adult movies, he paid with a $100 bill, and he left. And they said they recognized him because just like with the gas station, he was a regular there. So when police hear this, they start to think that there was perhaps a sexual motivation to the disappearance of Alexis Murphy. So they want to get back to his trailer as soon as possible and see if there's anything else they can find. So they get a warrant, and then police officers from 2 agencies, the local police and the FBI, go to his trailer to do another search. And this time they find something pretty horrible under his couch. Under the couch, they found the shirt that Randy was seen wearing at the gas station the day that he had his interaction with Alexis. And inside this shirt, which was covered in blood, they found wrapped up, which looked like it was wrapped for safekeeping. Like it looked like he was trying to keep these items. And this was some of Alexis's hair and also a set of fake eyelashes. And reportedly, when Randy learned that police had found this, he said to them, quote, "You might as well take me in. I'm getting tired." With that, Randy Taylor was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Alexis Murphy first-degree felony murder because she was believed to have been murdered during the commission of an abduction, and he was charged with abduction with intent to defile, and he was held without bond. I guess this was quite a shock to him. Like, those who were there said that when he was arrested, he had a look on his face like a deer caught in the headlights. And they think that's because he just didn't expect for all hell to rain down on him so hard, so fast. And they think that's because he had done something like this before and had not been caught, or has at least not been caught yet. And they didn't just have this vague idea in their mind of who this might be. They had a very specific woman in mind that they think that Randy murdered before. And this was 19-year-old Samantha Clark. It was September of 2010 when a woman named Barbara left her home to make the 5-minute drive to her work to work an overnight shift, leaving her 2 children at home. This was 12-year-old Hunter and his big sister, 19-year-old Samantha. The two were already in their pajamas. Samantha was watching TV and Hunter was in his room. So she left expecting that nobody was going to go anywhere because it was nighttime and there was no reason for them to leave. And this was something that was pretty common in their household. At around 12:30 that morning, Barbara's cell phone rang, but she was at work, so she could not answer it. Once she got her break, though, at about 1:30, she called back. It was her home that had called her. And when she called back, she got Hunter on the phone, and he just told his mother that, quote, Sissy left. He said that she had called out to him and said that she was going to leave, and that she did, but she had never come back. Barbara asks him, like, do you know where she went? And he said, no, she didn't tell me. She just said that she'd be back, and then she didn't come back. So Barbara goes home, and when she gets home, she finds that Samantha's pajamas are, like, on the bed, I believe, so she could tell that she had changed her clothes, and all that was missing from the house was Samantha's house key. But her mother immediately thought this was so weird because Samantha, one, was never the type of person who would go out by herself after dark. It just wasn't in her nature. And two, there was no public transportation running at this time of night. So where would she have gone and how would she have gotten there? So her mom just kind of was like, well, she is an adult. Let's see what happens. Hopefully she'll be back soon. And she just tried to act normal. She got her son off to school the next morning. She took a little bit of a nap, thinking, like, by the time I wake up, Samantha will be back with a good explanation as to where she went. But when she woke up a couple hours later, her daughter was still gone. At this point, she was worried, so she went to the police station to try to report her daughter missing, but she was told that she had to wait 48 hours before filing a missing persons report. And because of this, because they made her wait 48 hours, the crucial amount of time, like the crucial time where police should be looking for things, was missed, with her mother saying that by the time they started, it was too late and only God knew where her daughter was now. No one had heard from her or seen her. Her mom would literally drive around and look for her and found nothing. Once police got involved, they searched all over Central Virginia, but there was no sign of her. Now, I tell you this for 2 reasons. One, because Samantha's case is still open and unsolved, so people need to hear about her and to see her face. And 2, because it's relevant to what we've been talking about here with, I almost thought his name was Larry, Randy. He's so unimportant, forgettable. Randy Taylor. It's relevant to Randy Taylor. When investigating Samantha's disappearance, police started to look into people that Samantha knew. And some of these people were a group of people that she had met just about a week before she went missing. And though she was only 19 years old, one of these people that police looked into was a man who lived in the same trailer park that she and her family did. And this was 45-year-old Randy Taylor. Not only did she know him and they had just recently met, but on the night she went missing, he had called her at her family's home 6 times. He called her 6 times, and he was the last person she spoke to before all of a sudden she left her house in the middle of the night and never came back. Now, to this day, there has not been enough evidence in Samantha's disappearance case to make an arrest, but Randy is the main person of interest in her case. And her case, though it's been so long, is not cold. In 2021, the police came out and said, listen, her case is not cold. At the time she went missing, the technology we would need to solve it just was not up to the standards of what we would need, but we are getting new leads every day, and with new technology, we're getting closer and closer to solving this case. Her case was even changed from a missing persons case to an abduction and murder case because once Randy became a person of interest in Alexis's disappearance, her case and Samantha's case became, quote, inextricably entwined. The two counties where the girls disappeared from were only an hour away from each other, and both girls were last seen talking to Randy Taylor. Like, they were last known to be talking to Randy Taylor before disappearing. And both families believe that Randy Taylor is the person responsible for the death of their children. And it's so sad for Samantha's mom, after all these years, to have no idea what happened to her child. And she said of her daughter, and I quote, "I miss her smiles, her laughs, the funny things she would say to make me laugh. She's a happy girl. She would always stay happy. And if you were sad, she'd find a way to make you happy." Sounds a lot like Alexis. And speaking of Alexis, by the way, her family also believes that Randy Taylor is responsible for additional murders, with Alexis's Aunt Trina saying specifically of this, quote, "I don't think Alexis was his first rodeo. I don't think she was the first girl. I don't think he ever imagined that the FBI would be involved or that this case would ever be as big as it has become. And that's where he made his mistake." And I agree, because he was arrested for Alexis's murder. And though he has not been arrested for Samantha's murder, her case has now been changed to a homicide case and is being investigated as such. Which I already have put photos of Samantha on the screen, but I'm going to put another photo of her on the screen now. I want everybody to see her. At the time she disappeared, Samantha Ann Clark was said to be about 5'4", 145 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She had a few tattoos, a Playboy bunny on her right arm, a tiger tattoo on her right ankle, and 2 dolphin tattoos on her lower back. So that's just something to keep in mind. I really wonder if they'll be able to one day create a solid connection between Samantha and Randy, and like Samantha's murder and Randy. But for now, we do have a solid connection between Randy and Alexis's murder. And what's so sad here is that the beginning stages of this, like when he was first being arrested and things like that, or when he was first being looked into, rather, Alexis's mom didn't believe that she was even gone. Like, she said that she thought she would know, that she thought she'd be able to feel it in her bones, and thought that instead this guy was just responsible for taking her and hiding her. And she said she even wanted to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation from a mother to a father, because reportedly this guy has kids. She says she just wanted to look him in the eyes and ask him where Alexis was, because she said when she looked at his eyes, she didn't see a killer. She saw a predator, but not a killer, and that's why she thought that perhaps he was holding her somewhere. She just had to hold out hope. She said that's the only thing that was getting her out of bed in the morning, was the hope that this would be the day that they would call her and let her know that Alexis had been found. But, you know, they were looking. They were trying to find her. Like, Randy lived near a river, so they had divers and, like, you know, police pups out there searching the best that they could. And at one point, they actually did think they found something promising, because they ended up finding a red sweater that they thought sort of looked like what Alexis had last been seen wearing. So they thought they really had some promise and some hope here. But it turned out to be unrelated. So they had no idea where she was. And they even ended up having like billboards put up on Route 29, the road that she would have been driving on when she disappeared, that just said, quote, "Where is Alexis Murphy?" Alexis' mother did interviews and made statements to the media, just asking for any help from anyone who knew any information that they can give to police. She just wanted to know where her daughter was. And reportedly, the community really came out and rallied, not just behind Alexis, but also behind her family. People were constantly at her mom's house. She didn't have to cook food for herself or her family for weeks. And people even raised money to help her be able to afford to take time off work. And coworkers donated their like sick and vacation days, which is such an amazing thing. Maybe I'll get on my soapbox for a second and say that her employers could have maybe donated that to her, since they, you know, have more money. The USPS. No, that wasn't the US. Yeah, the USPS. Tell me the USPS can't afford to slide her a couple sick days so her coworkers don't have to give up theirs. Now I'll get off my soapbox, but that's just something that I'm thinking about here. But can you imagine your daughter is missing, presumed murdered, and you have to sit here and toil between like, do I go back to work because I need to survive and be able to eat? Or do I stay home and deal with this because how am I supposed to work while dealing with this? Can you imagine being in this situation? No one should have to. The stress. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But Alexis's Aunt Trina said that at some point you just have to deal. And she said specifically of this, and I quote, "We didn't ask for this. It was just given to us. And so we're going to deal with it the best way we know how." They just knew they were never going to give up. They kept Alexis's name out there and asked the public to wear pink in Alexis's honor since that was her favorite color. People were also wearing t-shirts with her face on them and posting their pink photos online using the hashtag #PinkOutForAlexis on Facebook. And Alexis's case really did garner a lot of attention on social media. It ended up gaining the attention of two rappers that I am not familiar with, forgive me, but Whale, W-A-L-E, and J Wills with a Z. Apparently, a song and music video was made about Alexis, and not just about Alexis, but another missing girl named Sage Smith, who went missing while visiting a friend named Eric McFadden. Sage went missing that day, and to this day has never been heard from again. And it's a case that I am familiar with, that I've been familiar with for a while. And I guess her friend, Eric McFadden, when he was first interviewed, this is going to blow your mind, maybe it won't if you know the case. When he was first interviewed, he said that Sage never showed up. Then police went back to interview him again, and he had dipped. He had just fled. He went and he was gone. And he has been on the run, and police have been looking for him since 2012. 2012. This is not the case we're talking about, but I'm like, can you believe that? No. But the point is, I mention it because the song that was dedicated to Alexis also featured Sage. So time marched on, and before Alexis's family knew it, it was the holidays, and they knew it was not going to be possible for them to enjoy this time, right? Because they were instead awaiting a trial. There was like a pink Christmas tree that was decorated that was outside of the gas station where she was last seen, which is a very sweet thing to be done in her honor. And of course, there were posters posted around asking for any information, but you can have that, but it doesn't mean that things are okay, right? It's like, that's great, but they knew that their holiday wasn't going to be anything special because the person they loved wasn't there. And not only is she not there, they don't even know if she's okay. They don't know what's happened to her. And her mother said of this, quote, "I still don't have my daughter. I still don't have my girl. And that's all I want for Christmas is my daughter back." And her father, Troy, just said he was trying to stay strong. He was going to take it day by day until eventually they had some answers. Now, as we know by now, Randy was arrested. And as I'm sure you can imagine, he pled not guilty to the murder charges, saying that instead, Alexis was all good and fine when she left his trailer in the company of another man, Damien. Now, Damien did end up testifying at his trial, saying that yes, he knew Alexis. Yes, he worked at the McDonald's next to the gas station where she disappeared from, a gas station where she often went with her, I believe it was her cousin, to get frappes. But that he wasn't responsible for the murder, that he wasn't even in town when it happened, and that he was ruled out by DNA. But still, this is what Randy was saying happened. And despite Randy saying this is what happened, his attorney didn't even call Damien up to question him. Now, Randy's attorney did make sure to ask the public not to rush to judgment about Randy, that he didn't like seeing what people were saying about his client in the media because they just didn't know enough about the case to have an opinion. Now, because of this, his attorney did try to get a change of venue, saying that because of where this happened, because it was such a small town, because I don't even think I mentioned how small the area was that Alexis disappeared from, but the town was said to be a mile long. Like, you could drive through it in 1 mile and you'd be out, and that was it. So because of this, because of how small it was and the publicity the case was getting, and his attorney tried to get a change of venue, but the judge denied this and instead issued a gag order so that the attorneys, the cops, anyone involved with the case could not talk about the case publicly. With that, jury selection began, and within no time, well, not no time, but no time for you and I discussing this. They did have a jury. It was 8 women and 6 men. So trial was set to begin. Now, before trial even began, the prosecution went to Randy with a plea deal. They were like, hey, if you give us the location of Alexis's body, we will give you 20 years, which is significantly less than what he would get if he was convicted for her murder. And in response, he said to them, quote, "Give me 10. But Alexis's family, the prosecution, they did not budge, and they were going to trial. And trial began, I believe it was May 1st of 2014. And this trial was referred to as the, quote, trial of a lifetime. There were about 30 friends and family members present in the courtroom, some wearing pink t-shirts with Alexis's picture on it. There were even parents of other murdered girls there in support of Alexis's family. One of these people was Gil Harrington, who was the mother of Morgan Harrington. Morgan Harrington went missing from a concert in Charlottesville in 2009. and was found dead a few months later. The man responsible for her murder was Jesse L. Matthew Jr., and he is an evil piece of shit for one, and comes up later in Alexis's murder story, this case, for two. So just log his name in your brain because we're putting a pin in him. We're coming back to him a little bit later. But anyways, after Morgan's murder, her family started Help Save the Next Girl, which is a nonprofit to help end violence against women. And Alexis's Aunt Trina became very involved after forming a bond with Morgan's parents. And so she was very involved with advocating against violence towards women, which made what happened to her later in life all the more tragic, which we're taking another detour. This is when I tell you that I learn about other cases while researching cases, this is what I'm talking about. Because what happened to Alexis's aunt, oh my gosh. So this is such a sidetrack, but in 2018, so 5 years after Alexis was murdered, but before her body was eventually found, spoiler alert, Alexis's cousin, this is 23-year-old Xavier Murphy, was arrested for the second-degree murder of his girlfriend, the mother of his child, Tatiana Wells. And he was also charged with possession of a firearm in relation to this murder. And this guy, Alexis' cousin Xavier, was Trina's son. And after this happened, after he got arrested for this murder, she posted on Facebook, something that I think was very perfect and sad. Perfect in that she wasn't justifying his actions. She wasn't trying to hide what he did. She was making sure that everybody knew that he did it and that she was holding him accountable for doing it. But sad because this was literally her child. This is her child who did this. And she said online of this, quote, "An all too familiar story in my timeline. A beautiful woman's life cut short by a violent relationship. The only twist today is it's my child on the other side of the gun. My son is the perpetrator. The very thing I advocate against has been committed by someone I once carried inside me." She continued, quote, "My son's actions have altered the course of many lives, and the impact will be everlasting. I have always told my children that you must live with the consequences of your actions, and nothing has changed." Now, this video is not about this case, but I just felt that there was no way that I could tell this whole story and talk about Trina and like her advocacy work and Alexis and not mention her cousin doing this. So for anybody who wants to know what happened here, the synopsis of synopsises, Tatiana's family did not want a trial. They just wanted Xavier, her murderer and the father of her child, to be held accountable. So he took a deal and pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and firing a gun in an occupied building. He said that the two had argued and that when he shot the gun, he had not meant to kill her, though he did literally shoot her in the head. He said he actually wanted to kill himself, not her. And in the end, the judge sentenced Xavier to 10 years in prison, which I believe is the max he could have gotten for voluntary manslaughter, and was also given 3 years and 8 months for the firearm charge. So that is a very small amount of time for murdering somebody, but that's what happened there. Now let's go back to what we were talking about. So anyways, Morgan's mother is there. Alexis's family is there, and they are preparing for a very emotional time. I mean, this is something they've never gone through before. This is going to be the most emotional thing they've ever had to deal with in their lives. And a lot of what they were going to learn was going to be totally new because the police were keeping everything like really secret, even from the family. So a lot of the details they were going to be hearing in the trial, they were going to be hearing for the very first time. During opening statements, her family got an idea about just how bad the details of what they were going to hear were going to be, because the prosecutor talked about the bloody, balled-up shirt under the couch that contained her ripped-out extensions and her eyelashes. They talked about the stud that was found, the torn fingernail, and her smashed cell phone. Her family said this was very painful, especially hearing about the bloody shirt, because it just let them know that there was a struggle and that she put up a fight. And though that was very hard, because they said that was the hardest part, it also gave them a little bit of, I don't know what the word would be. I can't remember the word that they used, but maybe a little bit of comfort. I don't know if there's an English word. I don't know if there's a word in any language that would describe like a comfort of something awful, but in knowing that she did fight for her life. So the evidence against Randy was that, the physical evidence, like the blood and the smashed cell phone, because these are things he couldn't really explain away, right? He tried to explain that she was there with a friend, that they had a good time and everything was fine, because that could explain how her DNA could have gotten into his trailer in the first place. But it doesn't really explain like the signs of violence, right? Ripped out hair, eyelashes, torn fingernails, and blood. You can't really say that she was at your house having a fun time, left smiling, and that this is what she left behind. Her phone too? Like, it made no sense with the prosecution saying specifically of this quote. Is it reasonable to leave without her hair extension, her nail, her blood, and cell phone? And this wasn't all they had. They also had evidence that was like witness testimony. They had the evidence from the people who worked at the gas station, who had seen both Alexis and Randy there at the same time and had seen them talk to each other. They had testimony from the people who worked at the sex shop, who had seen Randy there right before he was at that gas station. And they also had testimony that placed Randy at the location where Alexis's car was dropped off around the time that it was dropped off there. This whole situation is that there was an Applebee's that was relatively close to where Alexis's car was dropped off. So 30 minutes after her car is seen being dropped off in that parking lot, he shows up at this Applebee's, sweaty as hell, like he's been walking a while. He goes in, looking like a mess, orders a couple beers, drinks them, and then takes a cab home. Now, why would he do that? Why would he be in this area without his vehicle? He has a car, so why would he need to go there and then take a cab home? Perhaps because he drove Alexis's car to the movie theater and then got out and hoofed his ass to Applebee's and didn't have a vehicle because he can't drive two cars, so then he had to take a cab home. Just a thought, but it definitely didn't look good. The jury also got to hear the police interviews that Randy gave after Alexis disappeared, where he denied ever being at that gas station. And then he was shown video surveillance of his own stupid face. It was like, okay, I was there. And then he denies that Alexis was ever at his trailer. But then they're like, here's her DNA in your trailer. And he's like, okay, she was here, but she left happy and fine and everything was cool, baby. And another thing that was presented that isn't directly related to Alexis, but is just very weird, very creepy, and shows that there's a darkness inside Randy, is that on the property where he lived, a scrapbook was found. And it was pages upon pages of photos of women in like suggestive, sexy poses, lingerie, things like that. But their faces were all cut out, and like a new girl's face was put where the old girl's face should be. When they looked into it, they found that this face that he had put all over these other women's bodies was the daughter of the owner of the car dealership where he used to work. Now, for the defense, they tried to do what they could. They tried to get some statements that Randy made suppressed and some evidence suppressed. So, what? But no, my brain just shut off real hard. They tried to do that, but the judge denied it. So basically, the defense was kind of like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Jury, you can't even prove that she's dead. You can't prove that Randy killed her. Maybe, how do you know that he didn't just kidnap her and sell her overseas and she's alive? That's a lesser charge. You don't know that that didn't happen. And how do you know that this person, Damien, wasn't involved? The police didn't even look that hard at him. He basically said, like, you might not like Randy Taylor, and that's fine, but you do not have enough to convict him. There has to be reasonable doubt here. And this is when the prosecutor was like, hold my beer. He then pulled out stacks of envelopes that contained evidence, like the bloody shirt, the ripped fingernail, the extensions, and was like, listen, this evidence doesn't lie. Then he put on some gloves and he pulled out like the bloody shirt and was like, no abduction? No murder? That's weird. And Randy, through all of this, through this entire trial, is just like, it looks so bad for him. He chose not to testify on his own behalf. The jury was then sent to deliberate, and Randy was in danger of getting a minimum of 20 years, but the prosecution was asking for a life sentence. And, fun fact, discretionary parole was abolished in Virginia in 1996, and the jury in Randy's trial was clear that they did not want him ever to be released, because after just 6 hours of deliberation, he was found guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, and the jury was recommending life sentences on both counts. Now, Alexis's family was as happy as they could be. Alexis was still gone, but her aunt did say that the guilty verdict was like winning the lottery. Alexis's mother spoke in court after the verdict was read and got very emotional, talking about how the year that her killer was being sentenced was supposed to be such a big year for Alexis. She was supposed to be graduating high school and moving on to college and starting her life, but instead, here they were dealing with this. Speaking of which, just days after Randy was found guilty, but before his sentencing hearing, the date that was meant to be Alexis' graduation came. She was meant to be walking that stage, but instead her family was there to accept a certificate on her behalf. And many graduates who were there showed their support by wearing pink ribbons and decorating their caps with Alexis' name. Now, for his sentencing, Randy was actually not in the courtroom for his sentencing. Well, at least not for all of it. He was there for part of it. And he actually even addressed Alexis' family directly, telling them that he did not kill her, which he's got some serious nerve. He says this, but he also, after being found guilty, decided that he wanted to try to bargain for the lesser sentence of 20 years. And you remember, the prosecution already came to this saying that they will give you 20 years if you reveal the location of the body. And he said, give me 10. Well, now that he was found guilty, he's like, hey, can I have those 20 years now that I have lost? I'm going to be in jail probably forever. Can I get those 20 years and I'll tell you where she is? But her family decided not to make a deal with him. They were like, no, you can't. You can stay in jail forever, you dick. Now, I say that he was there for part of his hearing, and he did get to hear a little bit of Laura's victim impact statement. And I think that that's what really shook him and caused him to leave, because she said to him, quote, "It's been a living hell for us. If Randy Taylor had been in my shoes, how would he feel?" Now, shortly after this, Randy's attorney stood up and told the judge that Randy requested not to be present for the rest of the hearing. And before the judge could even respond, Randy had already gotten up and tried to run out of the courtroom, which, how do you feel about this? Because I think that you should have to sit and listen to the statements of the people whose lives you've destroyed. I think that's what I think. But he wasn't there. But his absence did nothing to protect him from his fate. And on July 23rd, 2014, Randy Taylor was given 2 life sentences, which was a huge relief for her family. And as I'm sure you can imagine, was a huge annoyance for his attorney. His attorney was like, listen, the closest the prosecution got to proving that this girl is dead is merely her lack of being here right now. And he even immediately tried to file motions to have the verdict set aside, but the judge denied them right off the bat, saying that they did not need a body to prove that he had killed her. So he was in jail, and he was still full on denying any involvement in Alexis's murder. He did an interview where he said that he did not murder or abduct Alexis. He said that you could ask anyone, even people in jail with him. He's just not a mean, disrespectful, or violent guy. He said that all the trial did was ensure that 2 families are now hurting, Alexis's and his. And he said that justice was not served in this case, and until Alexis is found and he is free of his charges, there will be no closure here. And boy, he would not stop for a while trying to get people to believe this. First, by again accusing another man of being responsible for Alexis's murder, and then by appealing. So let's first start with the other man that Randy claimed was responsible. You remember how I mentioned Jesse Matthews, the guy who murdered Morgan Harrington? Well, Randy heard about this and was like, what if, trouble and twist, he's also responsible for Alexis's murder? Basically what happened here is Jesse Matthews is a man who was convicted of 2 murders. This was the murder of Hannah Graham, whose body was discovered only 5 miles away from where Morgan Harrington's body was found. And both murders were linked to Jesse, and he eventually pled guilty to both murders. So Randy hears about this guy, and he's like, this guy kind of fits the description of this guy Damien that I made up in my head. And so what I'm going to do is try to say, hey, this guy killed Alexis. So he has his attorney do the things that attorneys do to try to have the DNA evidence in Alexis' case tested against Jesse, and also to have her social media scoured to see if Alexis had ever spoken to Jesse. They were like, hey, this guy is literally a convicted killer and serial rapist who was working in the area that Alexis disappeared from around the time she disappeared. It would simply be irresponsible not to look into him a little bit, which I don't necessarily disagree with, to look into it, but there's so much evidence against Randy that it's like, yes, but also no, because like, did Jesse put this shit in your trailer? Did you know him? Is he your friend? Was he there? Now, even though there was literally nothing that connected Alexis to Jesse, the prosecution actually agreed with this. Whether it be just to shut him up, I don't know. But they agreed to test the DNA. So they took DNA from both Randy's trailer and from Alexis's car. And when they tested it against Jesse, he was not a match. And as I said, it seemed clear that even if Jesse was involved, that didn't mean that Randy wasn't. Her family even came out and said that even if they determined like that moment that Jesse was involved, they would still never believe that Randy wasn't involved, because it was Randy's trailer where the bloody shirt was found and her hair and her nails, and it was his shirt and her blood on it. And they were like he was involved. No matter what he says, he still did it. Now, with that being a clear bust for him, the only option he had left was to try to appeal. So he did that. In December of 2014, Randy Taylor filed an appeal claiming that he did not receive a fair trial. He said that he believes his trial should have been moved outside of Nelson County to get a fair trial because there was just too much love towards Alexis's family and therefore too much bias against him. He also said that his attorney just sucked. He said that the prosecution called up like 40 witnesses and that the defense rested their case after just an hour, which is rough. He said that it was supposed to be a 2.5-week trial, but that his attorney had just, quote, run out of steam. The quote was actually run out of fuel. But they disagreed. The appeals people, they disagreed. And in 2015, his appeal was denied. So he tried to appeal to the Supreme Court of Virginia, right? Yeah. And in 2016, that was also denied. Now, most everyone was very frustrated with Randy Taylor because her family, he was right about one thing. They were very, very loved. And a lot of people really backed her family. I mean, there were a few people who didn't. I read that there were some people that like right after he was found guilty, they ripped the flyers down from their windows, even though the location of Alexis's body still hadn't been recovered. So you would think you would still hang those. But most people were still behind them and were rallying with them and trying to find her, and were pissed off at Randy that he wouldn't just come clean, tell the truth, tell what happened, since he was already going to be in jail for the rest of his life anyway. Because no one forgot her. There was a vigil held for her at Nelson High School the year after she went missing, and the searches continued long after she was gone. There was one huge search with over 150 volunteers, many of which were members of the volleyball team that Alexis was captain on before she was killed. And everybody was searching this 200-acre piece of private land used for hunting in western Orange County, Virginia. And it was an area that Randy was familiar with, so they thought maybe she was there. The area was super rugged to the point that you couldn't even go in a vehicle. You had to search on foot. So there were people out there with dogs and horses and like all-terrain vehicles that were searching in the water, looking for anything to bring closure to Alexis's family, but not just hers, but to Samantha Clark's family as well. They were looking for any dips or bumps in the ground that could show that something was buried or that dirt was moved. But sadly, searching all that area, nothing was found. Now, despite not finding anything that day, having so many people out there still looking gave her family hope. It gave them hope that no matter what, people were not going to give up on Alexis, and that people were going to continue looking for her until she was finally found. But unfortunately, this would take years. On February 17th, 2021, it was announced to the public that Alexis Murphy's remains had been discovered about 5 miles from where she had last been seen alive back in 2013, and only 4 miles from Randy's trailer near State Bridge Road off Route 29. Apparently, the remains were discovered on a private property in Livingston after Randy actually admitted to police where he had left her. So it took years, but he finally did come clean. I guess she was actually found back in December of 2020, but once her body was recovered, it took the medical examiner like 2 months to conclusively determine that this was her. But it was. It was the body of Alexis. Randy had killed her, and he had admitted that he had killed her by suffocating her. Her family learned that it was Alexis on February 5th, but they didn't come out and announce it to the public for 2 weeks to give her family a chance to grieve and make arrangements for her celebration of life. Her family made a statement after she was discovered where they said that though it had been approximately 3,679,200 minutes since Alexis had been missing, the police kept their promise to bring Alexis home. On the 10-year anniversary of Alexis's disappearance, her family and friends finally got to hold her celebration of life with her remains. family, friends, loved ones, police officers, former coachers, and members of the community all came to show their support and to celebrate who Alexis was. They talked about Alexis. They cried for her. They laughed for her. They remembered her. And her family was just so happy to finally be able to say that she was home. And her Aunt Trina said of this, and I quote, "I know that she's at peace. Yes, we grieve her. Yes, we miss her. Yes, we love her. We always will." But walk away today, 10 years later, after this horrible tragedy. And if you don't have peace, find it. And with that, my friends, is the story of the murder of Alexis Murphy. I hope you found my telling to be informative. I hope I gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I just want to thank you for hanging out and remembering Alexis with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I want to revisit the questions of the day. I have two, and these are them. 1, how do you believe Randy was able to lure Alexis to his trailer in order to kill her? Do you believe what he said about the offer of weed? Do you think it was something unrelated? Let me know all your thoughts about that. The second question is, do you think he's responsible for additional murders? Do you think he's responsible for the murder of Samantha Clark? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below about both of these questions, because I'm very curious to see what you think. Anyways, guys, before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with any cases you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it, so if I cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest, because they're often cases I haven't heard of or cases that need more coverage, and I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. Now, real quick, I have a question for you, the people who stuck around this long, because I know you're the real ones. Do you like this background at all? I can't decide. I can't decide how I feel. It's a little bit plain, but also it gives you the opportunity to see the cats. I could doctor it a smidge. Just let me know what you think, because I still don't have like an official place set up. We're figuring it out. We're manifesting girlies. Help, but let me know what you think, and be honest. It's okay if you don't like it. I would like to know. And now, with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.